Thank you, Mike, and good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending today's press conference. The information we are releasing today regarding child sexual abuse and the Diocese of Harrisburg details some very sad moments in our history. This information includes a list of priests accused of sexual abuse and details the new procedures we have put in place in order to protect children, all of which can be found at our new website just launched this morning. As it relates to the list, I wish to emphasize that the list is a list of accusations. We did not make assessments of credibility or guilt in creating this list. Before we get into more detail about the information we are sharing today, I want to take this opportunity to express my sadness that youth under the Church's supervision were abused. Many of those victimized as children continue as survivors to suffer from the harm they experienced. In my own name and in the name of the Diocesan Church of Harrisburg, I express profound sorrow and I apologize to the survivors of child sex abuse, to the Catholic faithful, and to the general public for the abuses that took place and for those church officials who failed to protect children. While we seek forgiveness in the name of our diocese, we continue in our sincere request that survivors come forward so that their situations can be addressed. We take seriously both my and the diocese's obligation to prevent such abuse from occurring, to foster healing, and to be transparent. When I became bishop in 2014, one of my first missions was to verify and resolve the status of clergy in the diocese. Over time, we began working with outside counsel and investigators who were able to track down and begin resolving the status of each priest and deacon going back to the 1940s. These efforts helped us to compile a complete list of clergy who have been accused of sexual abuse of a person under age 18. As has been publicly reported, the diocese previously intended to publish this list, yet the Office of Attorney General requested, in order to protect its then ongoing investigation, that the diocese stand down on that effort. The diocese honored that request. Now, with the investigation at an end and the Supreme Court having issued a stay pending further review, we thought it was appropriate for us to provide to the public a list of clergy with allegations of abuse against them. This investigation has caused the diocese to take a frank look at its past as well as its present. Part of that assessment was an evaluation by the diocese of whether any lingering symbols of the sad history revealed in the diocese's files remain. Specifically, the diocese evaluated whether the names carried on certain buildings, rooms, and halls in the diocese should remain. I have determined that anyone who has been accused of sexual misconduct and appears on our list will have his name removed from any place of honor throughout the diocese. As a result of a careful review of historical cases, it was also clear that the leadership of the Church did not, in every case, take adequate measures while handling matters related to offending clerics. With that reality, and after reviewing information with our legal counsel, along with the unanimous recommendation of the Committee on Naming, which was convened to advise me on these matters, I have directed that the names of every bishop since 1947, the beginning date of the grand jury's investigation, be removed from any building, facility, or room in the diocese. I agree with the recommendations I have received from my advisors on these matters, and I have instructed diocesan staff to begin efforts to change names, effective immediately. This decision may prove to be controversial, but as a bishop, I strongly believe that leaders of the diocese must hold themselves to a higher standard and must yield honorary symbols in the interest of healing. Because there are no records of these matters during the tenure of Bishop McDevitt, and since the investigation extended back to 1947, 12 years after his death, there will be no change to the naming of Bishop McDevitt High School. Additionally, the Diocese of Harrisburg has reviewed its historical files and learned that prior to the year 2002, the diocese from time to time entered into settlement agreements with survivors of child sexual abuse, and some of those settlement agreements contained confidentiality provisions. Though it has been the diocese's policy for some time not to enforce those confidentiality provisions, I learned that some survivors still feel constrained by them. Accordingly, on behalf of the diocese, I waive any remaining confidentiality rights the diocese has in those confidentiality provisions, while retaining all other rights the diocese has under those agreements. I take this step about confidentiality so that the survivors can feel free to tell their stories to whomever and whenever they wish. I hope that this step will further aid those survivors and perhaps others in their path to healing. As we move forward, I can assure you that during my time as bishop, the diocese, with guidance of experts in child protection and law enforcement, has done everything in our power to put into place all the safeguards necessary to provide for the well-being and protection of the children entrusted to our care. I can also assure you that any accusation against any diocesan personnel is reported immediately to law enforcement. We are and we have been committed to honesty, transparency, and to ensuring the safety of our children. On the website, you will find a new set of guidelines we are issuing to address child sexual abuse in the diocese. We have taken additional measures and continue to improve our efforts to protect children. These measures include, first, upon receiving any complaints, we turn them over immediately to the local authorities. Second, screening all employees and volunteers with multiple background certifications to ensure that individuals with a record of abuse are ineligible for hire or for volunteering. Teaching students how to stay safe and provide instruction in age-appropriate child abuse awareness programs. Fourth, requiring that all members of the clergy, every employee, and every volunteer successfully complete a state-approved online training program on how to recognize and to report child abuse. Fifth and final, providing ID badges for all individuals who have completed the required background certification and training for the Diocesan Youth Protection Program. While we have discussed this dark chapter, I believe it is important that we recognize the positive work the Church does by acting as a spiritual center for our community and the work that we do to help those in need. While we are talking about a very sad chapter, I do want to acknowledge all the faithful members of the clergy who have been doing a tremendous amount of good work in a very tough environment. As bishop, I am proud to work with these dedicated priests and deacons who are an authentic presence of God's love in their ministries in our diocese. In addition to being a place of worship for the Catholic community in central Pennsylvania, our Catholic Charities offers a variety of services for the entire community. Last year, Catholic Charities of the Diocese of Harrisburg spent $8.4 million funding a variety of programs to help the needy. Additionally, many of our parishes are active in supportive outreach to those in need throughout our local communities. The Church fills a variety of critical support functions in the community, helping those from all backgrounds, faiths, and economic standing, particularly our youth. In closing, I pray that the love of our God, whose tenderness, compassion, and mercy endures in every age, will continue to restore those who are survivors of all abuse, physical, mental, emotional, and sexual. I pray that the loving heart of Jesus will form us more and more each day into a community that works for justice, protecting those who are most vulnerable in our society, especially our youth. I pray that the Holy Spirit will guide those whose life's work and ministry calls them to care for those who suffer violence and abuse. And I once again ask for forgiveness from all those who are survivors of child sexual abuse, as well as from the members of our Catholic Church and the public who are hurt and who are scandalized in any way by such reprehensible actions. Thank you very much.